Hello and welcome to the Tour de France podcast with humansinvent.com. My name is Richard Moore and I am joined this evening by Daniel Friebe.
Good evening.
Lionel Birnie.
Good evening, Richard.
And by popular request, he's nodding confidently sitting beside me, Ciro Scognamiglio from Gazzetta dello Sport, making his second appearance in the podcast.
Thanks, hello everyone, and thanks to all my supporters.
Lionel, can you tell us where we are tonight?
We're in Castres, which is, I think, 1,350 metres up in the Pyrenees, above south of Foix, and just above Aix-les-Thermes. Foix, the home of cassoulet, for anyone interested in cassoulet.
You certainly are.
And we're perched on a grassy bank.
Being eaten alive flies.
Yeah, by insects outside the back of the press tent. It actually is a tent today, it's a marquee.
It's not a glamorous location,
Not
this,
really.
is it?
Ciro's still bashing away.
Let's press on with this podcast. So here we are, Castres. If Ciro can stop typing for just a second. He's working as we pod. He's an amazing multitasker. We're going to talk in the first... We can hear him bashing away. We're going to talk in the first part of tonight's podcast about today's stage, about the winners. In the second part, we'll move on to the losers. And in the third part, we're going to talk about tomorrow's second day in the Pyrenees. All very simple. There's the sound of Ciro bashing away. Go on, Ciro, keep bashing.
I can continue or not? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's
not. But really, I can assure that I'm really interested in this transmission, and for me, it's really an honor to be here.
It's an honor for us to have you here, and it's an honor to know that you are writing for Gazzetta, such an august publication, such an august organ, in our presence, in our midst. It's an honor to have you live reporting during our podcast.
Yeah, and the problem is that it's a little bit strange, but have you seen Italian riders haven't been so strong today? The first one, if I'm not wrong, arrived 32nd.
We'll talk about Italian riding in the second part because we're doing the losers in that part, so don't worry. Let's talk in this first part about the main winners today. An obvious one, Chris Froome. Now, he attacked with about 6 kilometres to go after some strong work from Team Sky, all stage. Daniel, impressions today?
Not really surprised. There was a brief moment when Sky looked as though they might be threatened when Quintana went off the front on the Porte de Paillere, and also there were a couple of sort of subpar performances, I think, from Sky Domestics today. One from Constantin Siutsu. David Lopez, perhaps not to the same extent, but
Siutsu wasn't in the best of humour when he got back to the bus. He pushed us out of the way.
Yeah. I got the impression that his teammates were slightly embarrassed in his company because he was obviously pretty cheesed off, and they were obviously elated. And on the other hand, absolutely fantastic performance by Peter Kenyuk. I think surpassed his own expectations. Everyone else's controlled the race on the Porte de Paillere, and then did a fairly good turn as well at the bottom of the final climb to Castres. But not really surprised that Chris Froome really blew the race apart. Contador was true to his form so far this year.
Kenyuk was outstanding. He had to pick up a bit of slack, maybe. I think maybe we're being a bit harsh to say that some of their riders were underperforming, because I think that the pace up the Col de Paillere was hard. It was, some of the other riders were saying it was very fast. I mean, Quintana went off and they had to ride pretty hard behind him without going into the red. So it was an outstanding performance by him. Kirienka as well, also very strong. It's interesting because I think that scenario, to have only sort of 3 men left at the bottom of the final climb to Castres, with Wiggins as leader, that would have been a problem. With Froome as leader, who can take the initiative and attack, less of a problem.
It's interesting you say Siutsu wasn't in good humour at the finish, but because I did wonder, thinking back to what Dave Brailsford said in yesterday's podcast about Sky having a slightly different tactical plan, I wondered whether it was really fast today up to the Porte de Paillere and then incredibly fast on the Porte de Paillere, and I wondered whether that was actually the game plan, was to try and burn people out before they even got to the climb, so that legs were feeling heavy on the Porte de Paillere, and it definitely wasn't what we would have expected. Just the 3 Sky riders left, and they could have left themselves with a bit too much to do, but everybody else was obviously cooked. I mean, there was no real response from anybody else other than obviously Quintana, who'd already made a do or die move, which came pretty close to causing some real consternation for Sky at one point, I thought.
You just wonder if he'd held back to the final climb, whether he might have been able to make that effort then and just either stay with Froome or go with Port or something and just leave himself a bit better place, you know.
Well, from what Daniel was saying yesterday about Movistar wondering whether he's got the engine at the moment for the full 3 weeks, perhaps they just thought the best option was to try something, really grandstand, go on the penultimate climb and really impress people, because he did. And at one point we had this fascinating pursuit match between two Tour debutants.
He looked fantastic and very smooth, beautiful rider to watch. He may even be a contender for tonight's Peddler de Charme award, which we'll be announcing in our third part with all new jingle.
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought it was when Roland caught him at the bottom of the final climax, Trois Domaines, and I thought perhaps Quintana, maybe with a little bit more experience, perhaps would have waited and used Roland, a bigger guy, for the descent, because the gap wasn't that big. But then as soon as Roland got to his back wheel, Quintana just accelerated and just left Roland, looking pretty static. I know he'd had a pretty tough chase down the descent of the Pyrenees, but to be able to put in that acceleration again and drop, let's not forget, one of the best climbers in the race so emphatically, it will be perhaps overshadowed a little bit because of the dominance of Froome and Port, but Quintana's performance today will be one we'll look back on in years to come, I think, as the moment here really, really arrived on the big stage.
Ciro, if you can pause your typing for a second and give us the benefit of your wisdom and give us your insight into today's stage. What were your impressions today of the stage and of Chris Froome and Sky's performance?
I would like to point out a fact. So first and second today for Team Sky, as we were used already last year with Froome and Wiggins, but I think the situation is different, because I remember in a press conference before the tour start, I heard Chris Froome talking about Richie Port, and he said, well, one of the things that I'm confident in this tour, and that I have a good friend as Richie Port with me in this team, and actually I never heard him to talk in this way, with this word, about Bradley Wiggins. So he never last year defined Bradley Wiggins a really close friend of him. So I think this is a clear difference comparing to last year, and it's certainly a good point for Froome.
Were you surprised to see Froome attack so early and that nobody responded when he did go?
No. My answer is no for both questions, because this year Froome has been more or less always the strongest in the race. We can remember that he lost only one stage race, Tirreno Adriatico, and the other 4 out of 5 he won. And his level on the climbs has been the best this year since so far. Maybe the question is, he will be able to maintain this level Team Paris, Team the Alps, that we are all 2 weeks on?
Long way. Daniel?
Other winners, the Rabobank pair, the Belkin pair of Ten Dam and Mollema. Mollema was a very nice surprise, because I think the Dutch public and the Dutch media have been waiting for this performance for a long time. They've felt that he has the talent. He's Robert Geesink without a lot of the insecurities and uptightness. I don't think the feeling among the Dutch commentators and journalists is that Geesink would be a fantastic rider, but he tends to overcomplicate things.
We saw him on the attack today, of course.
We did, but he thinks too much. He gets uptight about his weight, his training, etc., etc. Whereas Mollema has a much kind of more easy breezy attitude to things. And Laurens Ten Dam, I think his excellent performance today can be explained by the proliferation of barbecues on the final climb. We could certainly smell some, and Ten Dam, of course, is the man who has a barbecue every day of the year.
Famously, even at the tour, does he?
Apparently, but I think it's one of those urban myths, which is probably not 100% accurate. A bit like Oscar Freire and the yogurt spoon.
That's accurate.
Well,
Ten Dam has been around for years, and he's a good climber, a good rider, very jovial, affable sort of bloke, has a terrible luck over there as well. I remember him face planting last year and terrible wounds to his face. Rumour, I heard a rumour that he's a target for Team Sky for next year, so he may be going to Team Sky.
God, that would be good.
That would have been interesting, wouldn't it? Had he? And I suspect that if Geraint Thomas wasn't riding around with a broken bone in his pelvis, that he might have been the guy. I mean, he was the guy initially who'd been earmarked to do the job that Peter Kennyuk did today. Yeah. Peter Kenyuk's had to step up a place really, and I think Thomas would have probably been there, and you know they would have perhaps had Kennyuk there as well, and Tendam. Any more winners, Lionel? Any more winners? Andy Schleck, relative winner.
Schleckino.
Relative winner. I mean, 21st at 3:34, but given given the last couple of years, that's a victory for Schleck. Really,
it is, I think.
Yeah,
it's not
bad.
Mean,
let's not twist the knife too much. But I mean, I saw him come over the line and he
put his arms up in the air.
He got a consolation hug from his carer or soigneur, and it didn't go down too well. His body language suggested he was pretty disappointed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Rich, the final one. Romain Bardet, 22-year-old Frenchman.
Yes, you were excited about that.
Well,
you always get excited about French.
Well, I do, but this guy's been talked up quite a lot. He's one of I think, a very, very good generation of young French riders. Like Thibaut Pinot, excelled in amateur races that are, a real good litmus test of climbing, like the Giro della Val d'Aosta and Tour de l'Avenir, the Ronde de l'Isard, races like this. And AG2R were the team that managed to secure his signature, and he was outstanding today. 14th at 2 minutes and 34, so he's right in the shake-up.
We're always talking about a new French generation, though, aren't we? Romain Sicard, I'm searching for his name.
Well, he's having a shot. Yeah,
remember we used to talk about him as being the great next star. Anyway, that's enough for the winners. We'll move on to the losers and hear a little bit more from Ciro in this next segment. Some delightful music there playing us into this section. Daniel, where was that from?
That was Albi last night, and I think what I described on Twitter as Albi's answer to Sean Ryder, very dishevelled looking chap, but quite charismatic. He was gambolling in the middle of the road and entertaining everyone, including Rich. The Movistar riders, they took a stroll last night and they came and sat on the church steps and were listening to and were being serenaded by this fella. As were we, and it was very nice.
What a lovely scene, what a lovely picture.
Lovely story.
What a lovely picture you paint there, Daniel.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to today's losers, the big losers. Alberto Contador. Ciro.
First of all, I was reflecting about that. I hope that till this moment I have not been too many serious comparing to my former presence here. It's a problem for you guys or not? I mean,
serious.
Too serious or not?
Well, it's a serious topic.
Okay.
We'll move on to the jovial stuff later on. Don't worry, you can bring out the comic Ciro.
Thanks, the teacher.
Part 3.
About Alberto Contador, also his performance today, it's not really a surprise. What does I mean? That comparing his performance before his stop, certainly his level hasn't been any longer the same level. I mean, certainly it's true. He won the Vuelta last year after the stop, but with a marvelous stage in Fuente de, with a long breakaway, but he was not the strongest on the mountains, also in the last Vuelta. And so also in this season, by far, now Froome has been stronger than him. The problem for Contador is that not only Froome and Porte today have been stronger than him. Also other ones, also Movistar,
even
Kreuziger. I must confess, I talked a little bit to Birnie after the stage. He was really disappointed. I asked him, Birnie, are you surprised about this performance of Contador? And he said, yes, I'm very surprised. So maybe he didn't expect this low performance. And also I asked him now, it's possible that in the team leadership could change if Kreuziger will show again to be as the same level or also even stronger than Contador. He answered in a typical race way, can I say, the tour is so long, it's too early to think about that, but certainly this also could become a problem in Saxo team.
Could be possible, yeah. It's shocking to see Contador ride and think back to the rider that he was prior to his doping suspension. I mean, the way he was riding, sliding forward on the saddle in the way that he was, grimacing, before Froome attacked, there's a forklift truck just raced past. Apologies for that.
Looked a bit like a forklift truck.
He did actually. Nice link, Daniel. No, I mean, to see him perched on the nose of the saddle, grimacing in the way that he was, and the way that he was before Froome attacked. I think Froome spotted that, and that's why he attacked. He was a shadow of his former self.
Yeah, the sort of old souplesse has gone. I mean, he was kind of advancing crab-like up that climb, and the old zip is not there, is it? He never looks like he's going to be capable of attacking and really going away from people. And I can see him, if he continues on this form, sliding further and further down the general classification. And I think at this point, a top 5 would be a good result for him.
Ciro mentioned the Vuelta last year, and as he says, he wasn't even there. He wasn't his old self either. But the one thing we can perhaps cling on to in this tour, if we want an exciting race, is that I think regardless of what condition he's in, he will be aggressive. He will throw the cat among the pigeons at some point. That Vuelta, he won it with a bit of daring, really.
Yeah, he did, and he's going to have to do something, perhaps even tomorrow, second Pyrenean stage, because after the time trial, he's going to be potentially even further behind Froome and Port, and already it's a big gap. And once it gets to sort of 3 minutes, then any chance of winning is gone, unless Froome has a complete meltdown on Ventoux or in the Alps. And it's just, once you get onto a roll in the Tour, Froome has got such the upper hand now. I mean, the way he rode today will just give him enormous confidence. You could see him beaming with confidence, knowing that it's there, knowing that when he wanted to make those moves today, he was able to. And Contador will have exactly the opposite feeling, that when the pressure went on and he asked his legs to respond, there was just nothing in the tank for him.
The Italians. Where were the Italians?
I've just noticed Ciro's moved on to his second story. It might even be his third tonight.
Wow.
He's a machine.
Maybe the last Italian is still arriving here. So I don't know. We have to be careful because after a certain hour here the light comes off, and so it's not possible.
I thought Koenig was going to win this tour.
Certainly I'm kidding, but yes, Italy has a problem in this sense. I mean, the only rider with a really high international level is Vincenzo Nibali now. And so it's not very surprising that Italians are so bad in this Tour de France. Certainly also Cunego, I think. But, I mean, that for a rider as Cunego, 14 minutes are a lot on the first uphill stage of the Tour.
Ciro, what's his future, Cunego? Where does he go now? Because this season is almost a whitewash.
Yeah, but he has still a contract with this team for next year, so he could remain there in the team. I don't know with which ambition. I mean, let's hope that in this Tour de France he could enter in a breakaway and try to keep a stage victory. But we remember that only 2 years ago he arrived 6th in the overall. And that rider is disappeared for the moment.
Nibali, Lionel, you said last night, why is Nibali not riding this tour? It's a question that hasn't really been asked.
From the outset of the season, the plan was Giro and Vuelta.
Yeah.
It just seems odd to me that a rider of his level would choose to skip the Tour de France. I know the Giro was quite a brutal test with the weather being bad, but he won that really unopposed. That doesn't make it any easier on the legs, but he won it without having to really step into an extra gear. I find it strange that it's almost like going back to the 80s when Italian
70s.
riders, 70s and 80s, when Italian riders did skip the Tour de France and concentrated on the Giro, and now with the Vuelta at the end of the season, he could win 2 of them.
Yeah, and I think a big focus for the Italian rider, well, certainly riders like Nibali this year, Ciro will be able to confirm this, is the World Championships in Florence.
Exactly.
Ciro, can you tell us why Nibali isn't riding?
For him, the Giro has been a great effort. His opinion is that was not thinkable for him to think a double participation in the two Grand Tours, and so on. And I mean, as you can imagine, the period after the Giro has been really hard for him in terms of honor, travels, 2 times in Kazakhstan to have the honor for the victory.
For the team,
yeah. And I'm maybe our followers, they don't know this, but he also writing some articles for Gazzetta dello Sport.
Is he?
So
is he during the tour? So is that why he's not riding the tour?
Exactly,
he's
because
for Gazzetta.
because he has to do a work for us, so it's not possible.
Well,
to ride is not possible.
He doesn't earn enough from Kazakhstan. He has to top up his earnings with a column in Gazzetta.
You can imagine how it's difficult to concord. I mean, to talk to him and to discuss the arguments of the papers, because it's not easy to find him.
Nibali's sitting at home at the moment crafting these pieces. Does he have a ghostwriter or?
No.
He writes them himself.
Well, I have to tell the truth or not? It's possible in this podcast to tell the truth or not. Okay.
Please.
He has a ghostwriter.
Is it you, Ciro?
I'm not going to answer to this question. I mean, it's too personal. I consider this question too personal, and sorry.
Okay.
No, I prefer not to answer.
Yeah. Now, sorry, Dan.
So Pinot.
So we've got to talk about Pinot. Thibaut Pinot. So much for the big attack on Mont Ventoux. He attacked off the back on the descent of attacked off the back.
And so much for all the sort of hysterical coverage in the French press this week about the duel between Roland and Pinot. There are graphics in Aujourd'hui newspaper, the head-to-head. Where is Pinot? Where is Roland? And Pinot, we talked about how poor his descending was. The sort of eureka moment for me, as far as how bad his descending is, came at the Tour of Switzerland on the Albula Pass, which is a very straightforward descent. And he was dropped within the first kilometre. And today he was dropped very, very quickly. And I'm not sure how much time he'd lost by the bottom, but it was probably about 2 minutes. And he was out of contention then and lost 6 in the end.
This probably contributed to Mark Maddio's bad mood at the summit.
I said it earlier. He was in a bad mood. He was just being Mark Madio. He was just filibustering. Is that how you pronounce that word?
It might be. Yeah, it's a good word.
He was throwing up his arms. Is that what it means? Well, he was throwing up his arms and saying it's over. It's all over. The tour's over. Go home. Everyone should go home. It's finished. 100 different synonyms for.
It's over.
It's over.
We're not going home, and neither are Garmin-Sharp. And we spoke to Charly Wegelius, director sportif. I think Daniel, you spoke to Charly.
Yes.
And I spoke to Dan Martin, and we'll hear from both of them now.
Have you seen the time, guys?
No, 45 seconds on port, isn't there?
Yeah, but on your guys?
No. We took Fuglsang near the end.
Right.
And I think Valverde was just round the corner.
Okay. And Ryder is still suffering, is he, with his rib?
Yeah. I mean, broken rib in the Tour de France in the mountains. It was always going to be a bit of a struggle, but I hope he can come good later and still be an asset.
Is that what have the doctors said about it? Is it healing? Or can it heal in the?
It's chipped and it'll heal in time. There's nothing you can do about it. And it's taped and so on, but it's still an injury that's obviously going to have an impact.
And Dan, what was the sort of feedback from him in the stage? Was he feeling okay?
Dan felt super, as he has been all along.
Right.
And he did a really, really good job with Andrew and set a super pace for him. And, I think we'll see great things from him the rest of the race.
Right, okay. So he was kind of working for Andrew?
Yeah.
Because Andrew obviously must be feeling fantastic as well, if that's the case.
Yeah. Andrew's doing really, really very well, so very pleased with him.
Okay. And just the stage in general, no real surprises, were there?
People have said to me, are you surprised, are you shocked? And it's like, I don't really see what we learned today that we didn't already know.
Yeah.
The Sky have the 2 best guys in the race. As everybody knows, the first mountain stage, sometimes people can have rather unexpected crises, which can be permanent or not permanent. So personally, I'd expect to see Contador improving, and also Cadel Evans, because Cadel always gets better, through a race. So I don't think there's anything, earth-shattering about that.
Yeah. Any way conceivably that they can be beaten without something going drastically wrong for them?
Yeah, but people have to be prepared to lose everything to win, and this is the Tour de France, and as history shows us, even smaller placings are very valuable to people. So that remains to be seen how people are going to go about it.
How was that first mountain stage of the tour? How did you find it?
The first mountain's always hurt, It's a bit of a shock to the system, but the heat as well. I mean, the heat the last 3 days has really taken its toll, and I think you saw that in the results. A lot of guys just exploded. I think it was the heat more than anything.
Were you surprised to see how much carnage there was on the final climb up to here?
It's a mountain stage, It's a hard day. It's hot. It's been a hard week. So no surprise at all for me. But it's we limited our losses well, and we're still.
How did you feel?
I felt a bit empty at the bottom of the climb, so I should try and follow the first attacks, and I found myself with Andrew, so we decided to stick together and work together to limit our losses.
What's your ambition at this tour? I mean, because with you, there's a dilemma, I suppose, of do you go for a high GC placing or do you aim for a stage? What do you know at the moment? What your main ambitions are?
I'm taking it day by day. I mean, it's only my second experience of the tour, so it's. I'm not coming in here with any crazy ambition. It's more to. We got a great atmosphere in the team. We got a number of cards to play, and I'm sure we can win a stage before that long, and even the white jersey with this guy. So it's. But yeah, personally, I'm just going to take it. I'm really happy to take it day by day, and tomorrow's another day, and we'll see if I have a good day. Maybe I can try and win a stage.
This is the humansinvent.com Tour de France podcast, powered by Sharp.
Ciro, it's welcome back to our final part of tonight's podcast, and Ciro's been just overcome with excitement.
I love this podcast. Yeah, I'm serious. Appearances can sometimes tell lies, but I want to say that I love this podcast. It's really well done.
Thanks, Ciro.
Yes.
Yeah, you've been coming out to me virtually every day, and all of us, I think.
But I'm sure that also our followers think the same.
We're listeners,
for sure.
listeners rather than followers.
Listeners.
You have followers, Ciro. We have listeners.
You have disciples.
Right. Okay. So let's get on. Let's bash on. We're gonna look at tomorrow. We're gonna maybe plug the competition again to win. Phone call from David Miller on Monday by tweeting #TourMoment. And let's offer a book as well. We did a competition the other night where we offered a copy of the new cycling anthology for anybody who could correctly tell us which stage had never had a breakaway. In fact, we were wrong. There was a breakaway that day. We just missed it because we'd been too late to the press room. And it appears that there has never been a break, a day without a break, because nobody actually entered that competition. So tomorrow's competition will be guess the winner of tomorrow's stage. Entries in by 1 p.m. UK time. And the winner will get a copy of the cycling anthology. Chaps, what can we expect tomorrow? Ciro, you made a gesture with your hand there. I'm not familiar with all the Italian gestures. What did that one mean?
Yes, my gesture, what does it mean? I mean, tomorrow there will be a different stage from today. I don't think that big riders who do a great battle as today. Who knows? But I don't think so.
That little movement of your hand meant all that.
My little movement yesterday, it meant that, maybe I have to go, I have to leave this podcast, but the problem is that I don't want to leave it.
Is that what it meant? Okay, sorry.
Yes,
well,
but...
if you need to go, please... if you need to go and work.
I mean, my head is not easy to clarify the things in my head, as you can imagine.
I can't imagine. Yeah. Listen, Ciro, if you need to go, we can carry on. We can manage. We can manage without you, but we'll get you back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Ciro.
Thanks. See you when.
Ciro.
Ciro.
Ciro, yeah. Cheerio is an expression, means goodbye.
More or less. Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, cheerio.
Okay.
Cheerio, Ciro.
Thanks a lot.
Okay,
and,
Ciro.
See you soon.
Cheers.
Ciao, Daniel.
Ciao.
Lionel.
Let's try and continue without Ciro. He's lost it. He's running away. Okay, so tomorrow, what can we expect? It's a tough day. Now, this again, I mentioned this the other night, but it is reminiscent of last year when the first mountain stage of the mountain finish was followed by a stage that, on paper, didn't look that decisive. And tomorrow we have a descent to the finish, but there are 5 climbs. It is potentially a very hard and long day out.
Yeah, it is. The way the stage is set up, it kind of, the climbs Okay, there's the Col de Val-Laurent, which is the penultimate climb, and the Horquette d'Anchizan, which is the last climb. They're both pretty hard, but the descent off the Horquette d'Anchizan is pretty straightforward, and it's long. So I don't necessarily think that we'll see someone go away, a kilometre or two before the summit of the Horquette d'Anchizan and stay away all the way to the finish. It will probably be a more sort of complex stage, the way it unfolds and the way it's decided, as was that stage last year, Rich, that you're talking about, the Pinot one.
Well, I talked to Matt White, the Orica Green Edge sports director, just to get his feelings on the fact that Darryl Impey had lost the yellow jersey, although lost is a little bit harsh.
He did very well.
He did incredibly well. I thought he rode out of his skin. I mean, they talk about the yellow jersey giving you wings, and it certainly did for him today, because he hung in there and still looked pretty good, close to the top of the Porte de Paillere.
He's a stylish looking rider, maybe another contender for a Peddler de Charme.
He is. But Matt said that for them, certainly the Tour almost sort of resets tonight, and tomorrow they become the kind of the irritants, the aggressors, riders like Simon Clarke, possibly Stuart O'Grady, people that can climb over these mountains. It's Simon Gerrans again, maybe, and I think we'll see real aggression on the Péresord tomorrow, which is the first climb. They pretty much go straight up from the start. Straight up.
Porte d'Aspet.
No, it's the third climb.
It's the third. Sorry, the Porte d'Aspet. Yeah, the first climb is the Porte d'Aspet. So I think we'll see
interesting
a big group go, and it will be one of those days where it will be riders that have lost a fair chunk of time, and they'll perhaps be allowed to gain a fair chunk of time, and then it will be sort of playing catch up on the last climb, whether the break succeeds or whether the Sky-led train reels them in. And if that's the case, then we'll see a thrilling descent, I would have thought, and some kind of a sprint between climbers, which is always quite entertaining to watch, isn't it?
The interesting Porte d'Aspet and the Col de Monte, the first two climbs, from both the scenes of very famous crashes in tours gone by. Fabio Castrotelli died in 1995 on the descent of the Porte d'Aspet. The race will go past his monument tomorrow. And the Col de Monte is a climb we mentioned the other days, where Luis Ocaña in 1971 crashed and was in the yellow jersey and was taken by ambulance from there. That was his tour over. So yeah, it's one of those days where it might actually just be that long descent to the finish. Although we have also something we have mentioned is the fact that descents, have become an increasingly important part of bike racing, and perhaps somebody will take it on there.
I think the other thing to say, Rich, is that the Tour of the King of the Mountains competition could potentially be not decided, but certainly someone will
hopefully
make major inroads
the
tomorrow.
onesie.
Yeah, someone will make major inroads tomorrow, because there are 4 first category climbs and 1 second category climb, and we've seen this is a pattern as far as the King of the Mountains competition is concerned. Riders who are aiming for that jersey will target stages like tomorrow, where they can really stockpile points. I think Pierre Rolland, it'll be interesting to see whether Pierre Rolland is given license to go away and how early, because he shipped fairly significant damage today. It was about 4.5 minutes. I think Lionel's just
3:47.
3:47. So he's not a huge. He's 4:57 down on general classification. So he's probably not going to have a great deal of freedom, is he? He's not going to be allowed to go away. I wouldn't have thought 4 or 3 climbs from the end.
One thing we haven't talked about tonight, which has already become a discussion, especially with the fear that the Tour, may be a procession for Froome and Sky, is the inevitable suspicion. And we mentioned last night the wattages and so on that are discussed. We're not going to discuss this properly tonight, but just to remind our followers or listeners that it's something that we are very keen to explore in our podcast, and we've got
some good feedback from.
We've got some interesting
listeners today.
Yeah, we've got some interesting things lined up. Hopefully, I spoke to Team Sky today about speaking to Tim Kerrison on Monday on this very topic, and I spoke to their doctor for a while, Alan Barr, as well, who was very, very interesting on the subject, and I'm going to be interviewing him properly for a future podcast. So finally, I think we. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no,
Lionel,
that's good. That's good. That's
Daniel,
good. That's good. That's
you're
good.
itching.
I'm itching. Yeah, I've been bitten.
Yeah, I think we've all been bitten. The sacrifices we make, to bring you this podcast.
Yeah. Is it the Peddler du Charme?
Peddler de Charme. Peddler de Charme. But we've got a new jingle for introducing Peddler de Charme.
And now, Peddler de Charme.
That was it. Wonderful. So, what?
That was Ciro.
Yeah, we've got a Ciro. Yeah.
Good.
So, Peddler de Charme.
Well, I'm going to nominate an anti-Peddler du Charme. I'm going to give it to Thomas Voeckler, who
he was up for the Inertia Prize as well.
He wins this by a mile today because he always looks like he's trying to lick soup off his chin when he's climbing. And his jersey unzipped, shorts too high, socks too long. I mean, bless him. I really enjoy watching him race. I think it's fantastic. But why he chose today, I don't know. Because when he made that move on the Porte de Paillere and Quintana caught him, Quintana made him look pedestrian. He made him look like. I mean, he did almost come to a standstill at one point, Voeckler. And he
looked like he was on a
riding,
Boris bike, didn't he?
he was sort of veering sideways and. I just wondered why he made that move today.
He's normally very good. He's a good reader of a race, isn't he? And he's very good at picking his moment normally.
Don't have the legs today, do you?
No, but he's good at picking his moment ordinarily. It's a strange stage to go the first day in the mountains where it was obviously going to be one where the GC riders were going to be putting down their flags. Daniel, any Peddler de Charme?
Like you say, Quintana was very smooth, wasn't he?
Oh, very smooth. Very nice horse.
Roland is very smooth.
Yeah, Kirienka behind again, very smooth. We haven't mentioned Pete Kenyuk, have we? Oh, we have mentioned him. He looked good as well. He looked good. So there's a few guys look good today. We'll keep our eyes peeled for riders that look good and riders that look bad. Crimes against style.
Not really related, but I was quite impressed today by Mikel Nieve. Now at the finish line, it's usually absolute chaos, and we're usually very close to knocking over riders, ending people's careers because we're just fumbling around for our pens and dictaphones. Mikel Nieve ran my foot over today. And then 5 metres later, slammed the brakes on, turned around and said, sorry.
That's interesting. Now, this takes the Peddler de Charme into a whole new dimension. I think the charm could be not just how somebody looks, how elegant somebody is on a bike, but also how charming they are off the bike.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Early
That's a nice...
And that was it, and he finished...
I like the new direction this is going in, this prize.
So that was... to have the presence of mind to...
I'd just like to end with a bit of a mea culpa because I tipped TJ Van Garderen to finish on the podium.
I think we all did.
In our preview podcast when we were back in London, and today he lost 12 minutes 15 seconds. I didn't see him on the screen at all today, and I saw him come across the line. I was waiting for Daryl Impey because I had to speak to him for something I'm writing, and I was stunned. I thought I'd missed Van Garderen, and then I'd had a few minutes chatting with Impey, and then Van Garderen came past, and I just wonder, we'll find out no doubt in the coming days, what is wrong with him.
We haven't mentioned Cadel Evans at all, and actually he had a disastrous day as well. He described it as his worst ever day on the tour when he's been healthy. And this throws the BMC plan into chaos, I would have thought, given that the whole team was built around Cadel Evans.
Which, if we carry on this podcast any longer, it will send us into chaos.
Okay, that's enough.